Hello, everybody. We're going to talk a little bit more about the government during the 1920s and especially some scandals that were going on. So, this is going to be a quick set of notes, hopefully, and we'll be able to get through this and move on. All right, so today's standard is US 35. It deals with what's going on in politics during Harding and Coolidge's administrations, and that is your essential question. So at the end of this set of notes, you need to tell me what made the ideas and events going on during Harding's administration and Coolidge's administration so significant. All right, so the first thing we have going on is President Warren G. Harding. Okay, Harding is elected in 1920, which is the first election women are allowed to vote in. He promises in his campaign, whenever he's running for president, a return to normalcy. And when Warren G. Harding is talking about a return to normalcy, he's talking about a return to steward presidencies. So remember, Teddy Roosevelt was a modern president, right? He thought the president should shape the policy for America. The president should decide how America should function. Whereas Harding is very much a steward. He believes that Congress should decide which direction the country should go in, and the president's just kind of there to keep everything from falling apart. And that's all his job is. He's a caretaker. So Warren G. Harding, he is kind of hamstrung by the way he gets elected. The Ohio political machine is what gets him elected. So whenever he gets elected, he owes so many favors to that Ohio political machine that he can't really do anything. He gives so many jobs to his friends and his political supporters that those people in those jobs are going to cause problems for him. Now, the Ohio political machine is often called the Ohio Gang. The Ohio political machine, by the way, has gotten more presidents elected than any other political machine in American history. So it's interesting to go and look that up if you want to. Now, that's going to cause all sorts of problems and scandals for him. I mean, when you think of Harding, you need to think of scandal. Like those two things should go together in your head. It gets so bad that Harding actually dies of a heart attack while he's president. That is how much stress he was under. So Harding, under a stewardship presidency, and because he is a Republican, and because the Ohio political machine has managed to get him elected, and they want this, he is going to push for a more laissez-faire economy. Now remember, laissez-faire, French for leave it alone, means the government does not get involved in the economy. It lets business owners do whatever they want to do, and the government leaves them alone, which is the exact opposite of progressivism, right? Progressivism is the government is going to be all up in the economy. It's going to be all up in corporations' business, making sure that they're not doing anything wrong. And that is the exact opposite of laissez-faire. So Harding wants to go back to laissez-faire. Let businesses do what businesses are going to do, and the government should stay out of it. So government regulation of businesses is going to be lessened here. Now, we're still going to keep the important stuff like the Meat Inspection Act, right? Because nobody wants to go back to eating rat. But, I mean, most of the stuff is going to be lessened, and businesses are going to get to go and make out their own decisions. The government will also lower taxes for businesses, not for people, but for businesses. And it will trim the massive wartime budget. So during World War I, the American budget was about $18 million. And most of that was going to the war. So war's over now. So now Congress trims the budget down to about $3 billion to run the country. And to make up the money, because remember, we just lowered taxes on some of the richest people in America. So we are not getting as much money as we used to. We have to make that up somehow. So what they do is they raise the tariffs. Now, a tariff, for those of you who don't remember, is a tax on imported goods, which the whole point of a tariff is to make goods made in another country more expensive so that American-made goods are cheaper. Well, if you raise a tariff by 25%, then American companies can raise their prices and still be cheaper, which is what's going to happen. So the people who get hurt the worst in when tariffs are raised are consumers, right? The people who are buying these goods, because it doesn't matter where they buy it from now, it's going to cost more. And then farmers get hurt a lot too, because we raise our tariffs and then other countries raise their tariffs on us. And remember, farmers don't make money selling farm goods to America. Farmers make money selling their goods to other countries. That's where they make the big bucks. So if we raise our tariffs, they're going to raise their tariffs, and now farmers aren't making as much money in other countries as they're used to. Harding, one of the big issues he's going to have is he trusts his friends to make decisions over whatever job they had. So he would give them a job, and then that person would make bad decisions, and it would look bad on Harding. And one of the reasons is a lot of these jobs that are given out are a lot of these men in these positions don't really care about their job. They see this job or this government position as a way to get rich. And their hijinks or the stuff they're doing is eventually going to stress Harding out so much that he has a heart attack and he dies in 1923. One of the big scandals, like one of the huge scandals, is called the Teapot Dome scandal. And it's over a section of land in Wyoming near a rock formation that is called the Teapot Dome. And this scandal centers around the Secretary of the Interior named Albert Fall. So the Secretary of the Interior, it's his job to deal with all of the government-owned property inside America. That's his job. That's all he has to do. And during the war, the government had set aside a lot of natural resources to be used for the military. For example, the land near Teapot Dome in Wyoming was very rich in oil, and they had set that aside specifically for the Navy. So if we ever had to tap it, the Navy would have easy access to oil. Well, we have just lowered our budget. We're not in war anymore. You're going to find out in a couple sets of notes, we've actually outlawed war and reduced the size of our Navy. So we don't need that much oil for our Navy anymore. And the government would like to make a little bit of money to lease out some of this land to oil companies. Now, the way this would normally work was you would take bids, right? Different oil companies would tell you, I will pay you this much money to be able to use this land to drill for oil for a year. And any normal smart person would look through the bids and they would take the highest bid, right? They would, if you want to lease land from me, I'm going to agree to lease the land to the person who will pay the highest rent for it. Makes more money for me. That makes sense. That's not what Albert Fall did. What Albert Fall did was he took a personal bribe of $400,000 and then just picked one company, the company that gave him the bribe. They still leased the land from the government, but they leased it for about a quarter of what the government could have gotten for it. So they're paying like peanuts for the use of this land. Meanwhile, Albert Fall has a $400,000 nest egg that he didn't have before. And when people find out about this, they're shocked. They can't believe that someone would be that corrupt. And this, Albert Fall's the one who did it, but this looks bad on Harding because Harding is the one who hired Albert Fall. So now Harding looks corrupt because he keeps hiring all these corrupt people. So when Harding dies, Calvin Coolidge takes over. Coolidge is going to take over. He is also going to favor big business, just like Harding. But Coolidge is a little bit different. He believes that creating wealth benefits everybody. He is very much a trickle-down economics type of guy. He thinks if you can pump money into the richest parts of the richest few Americans, to those business owners, if you give them as much money as possible, eventually they will invest that money in their companies and they will raise their wages, and that money will trickle down to their employees in the form of higher wages. The problem is when you give those people money, they didn't do that. Right? When you cut their taxes and they have more money, they just spent that money. They didn't invest it in their companies, and they didn't, for the most part, raise their wages. So that money just stayed up at the tip of that pyramid and it never trickled down to the workers. So what Coolidge's economic policies end up doing is, if the gap between the rich and the poor was here, by the end of Coolidge and Harding, the gap looks more like this. Okay, so what it actually does is it makes the rich richer and it makes the poor just a little bit poorer. Coolidge will increase tax incentives for business development. That's what I was talking about here. He cuts a tax incentive as if you open a business, you don't pay as many taxes that year, right? So if you're growing your business pays less taxes. Okay, and so this is going to make the economy boom because everyone's opening up businesses because it's a way to keep from paying taxes. But once again, farmers are struggling, okay, because tariffs are going up. Farmers are trying to make those ends meet, and they can't quite stretch it. They can't quite stretch that dollar as far as they need to go. Labor unions are going to start striking all across the country again, because now not only are wages low, but some businesses are even getting greedy and lowering wages. So labor unions are demanding higher wages. Minorities are being oppressed at alarming rates. A lot of minorities are being told, you work for half of what a white person will work for, or you don't work, period. So you've got a lot of minorities, especially minorities in northern cities that are there for those industrial jobs, being forced to work for less than what a white person could get for the same job, because that's their only option. And Coolidge's reaction to all of these problems is to say nothing. Okay, he remains silent. They actually called him Silent Cal. Okay, he doesn't really chime in on any of these issues. He's a steward president. He doesn't think it's the president's job to step up and do this stuff. He thinks it's Congress's job. Okay, though there's one thing we do where the government gets involved in the economy, and it's not just our economy. The government gets involved in the world's economy, and it's because we get the crap scared out of us. In the Treaty of Versailles at the end of World War I, we break Germany. We break Germany into teeny tiny little pieces and then try to keep it from functioning. And Germany is struggling. Germany cannot afford to pay those war reparations to France and Britain. And because France and Britain are not getting paid those payments from Germany, they can't afford to pay us back for all the loans that we gave them during the war. And you need to know this. If you don't know this now through world history, learn it today. Anytime people get desperate, anytime it is bad enough you are not sure how you're going to feed your family, anytime you're worried about whether or not you're going to be able to have a house to live in tomorrow, when things get that desperate, people make desperate decisions. And one of the things that happens in Germany is the rise of the National Fascist Party in Germany, known as the Nazis. One of the young up-and-comers in the Nazi Party in Germany is a man named Adolf Hitler. That's him. And in the 1920s, Adolf Hitler and a group of Nazi members are going to break a law. Now, this is the only law, technically, that Hitler ever broke. All the stuff Hitler did in World War II that we hate Hitler for, technically he did all that legally because he just got Germany to change the laws. We'll get into that. Hitler is going to start something called, and the Nazi Party is going to start something called the Beer Hall Putsch. And this is the Nazis and Hitler's first attempt to take over Germany. And they tried to, like an armed coup, go to Munich and take over Germany. Just take it. It fails epically. Hitler goes to jail. While in jail, Hitler writes a book called Mein Kampf. It stands for My Struggle. It's really poorly written. It's a really bad read. I don't recommend it. If you want to read about a different type of political system, personally, I recommend Karl Marx's The Communist Manifesto. It's just written better. It reads better. And there aren't any more fascist countries around today, but there are communist countries around today. So if you're wanting to read about a different system, you might as well go ahead and read about a system that does exist. And we'll talk about the differences between fascism and communism whenever we get to the 1930s and we're getting closer to World War II. So that's the beer hall putsch. Germany is so broken, right? They are so worried that something this drastic could have happened. And we decide, okay, this is bad. We have to step in. We have to keep their economy at least somewhat level to keep this from happening again, because we don't want another war. And what we do is this down here. Okay. We're going to do this bottom section first, and then we'll come up to the top section. We decide through something called the Dawes Plan, DAWES, to help stabilize Germany's economy. And we do that by loaning Germany money. We loan Germany money. Germany uses most of that money to stabilize its economy, to get its factories back up and working, to keep the economies going. And then once its economy starts going again, they start paying Great Britain and France. When Great Britain and France gets that money from Germany, they pump some of that money into their own economies, get their own economies up and running, and then they start making payments to us for loans that took out during the war. Okay. So that's the first thing we do, economically speaking, because we don't want to have another war. Okay. There are some other political things we do because we don't want another war. The first one is the Washington Naval Disarmament Conference. You will probably see this on the EOC, called the Washington Conference. And this helped limit militarism. Basically, all of the different countries set a quota, and they said each country gets a certain sized military, and you can't go over that size. We actually voluntarily agreed to make our Navy smaller. That's how done with war we were because of World War I. We were convinced we would never go to war again. This was never going to happen. So we shrink our Great White Fleet. We also helped set up something called the Kellogg-Briand Pact. The Kellogg-Briand Pact outlaws war. We were totally on board with that. We can't do war anymore. The Kellogg-Briand Pact actually sets up a world court, which we never actually joined. The world court kind of functioned a little bit like the United Nations works now, but we never ended up joining that. I want to go back to the Dawes Plan for just a second, just so you can see how this worked. The United States is going to make payments to Germany. We end up paying them a little bit over $2.6 billion. Not all at once. We make them in small payments. But Germany's going to take those payments and they're going to pump it into their economy, and they're going to use those revenues from that to pay France and Britain. France and Britain will use that money to pump into their economy, and then they will start making payments back to us. So we're not getting paid back with our own money technically, but we do have to pay Germany money to keep the economies of all these countries working in order for us to make our money back. Okay. And that is it.